90% of consumers read online reviews before visiting a business. What do people see when they look you up online? We give you the tools you need to take control of your reputation. Send surveys to your customers via text message with Testimonial Collector. Get 5-star reviews on all the major platforms like Google, Yelp, and more. Track what people are saying about your business with Reputation Manager. Respond to comments and turn negative reviews into happy customers. See what your competitors' customers are saying about them with Competition Tracker. Learn great marketing tactics and what it takes to stay on top. A bigger social presence means more connections. Automatically generate and schedule engaging social media posts with Social 365. Build trust, boost sales, and grow your business.
And you are tuning in to another day in the life of an entrepreneur, where we stream Thursdays 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I bring you the best guests there's to have. And of course, and for those who have been following so faithfully, I am watching our downloads on the podcast, which says to me that you love the guests. And I love the guests because I bring the best guests on my show. I listen to what people say and say, hey, what type of guest to bring on to the show? You know, and I try my best to get those type of guests and working with some really amazing PR agents and publicists. So let's get the housekeeping out of the way. And then I'm going to introduce today's guest. So if you are watching on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and you're watching it live, sometimes I don't see your comments because I do get some emails saying, hey, I made a comment. I don't always see them. So hop on over to YouTube and go and jump into the super chat, or on Facebook, just simply go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. You will see all the platforms that we are live streaming on right now. Just click on the link and it'll take you right into the show. Okay, so for my very favorite sponsor, one of my favorite sponsors who has been with me since the beginning of time and has just really helped me broadcast and just with the visibility, and that is Marketing Out the Box with Sean Maddox. So if you want to reach more customers, grow your business, beat the competition, make sure you check out Marketing Out the Box and simply go to iwantmorecustomersnow.com with Sean Maddox. And then we have our new sponsors. Yay! Spinwax Radio. They are launching. I'm very excited about that. Spinwaxradio.com. So if you want more exposure, always looking for great talent in many different genres, make sure you check out spinwaxradio.com. Okay, so who do I have today? So let me tell you what's so special about this guest is being biracial myself. We're kind of like in a world of our own, I think. Sometimes, you know, it's where you fit in. You're wanting to fit in someplace, you know, but and being biracial can be a bit difficult. And so who I have on the show today, she's so multi-talented. Stalked her page a little bit. So I love the fact she's a comedian, writer, model, curvy model. And when I say curvy model, why do people think, oh, what is curvy model? Many times she just like deliciously got a little more skin. You know what we say about our curvy women. And of course has a great podcast, so many amazing things happening, you know. And so for us who are biracial, and really for everybody just coming from a different place, and that is Miss Anastasia Washington. And she, let me tell you, the new boss lady, the lady of entertainment. So let me tell you, she is going to be taking off. And if you haven't followed her, you're going to want to start. So let's bring her on to the show today, and that's Miss Anastasia Washington. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Hello.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you have decided to come on, that you know, when they introduced me and I saw all of your content and what you do, I haven't had anyone like you on the show, and that's what I love about the publicists that I work with. So, and coming from me, a biracial woman myself, I love what you're doing, and so it's really lovely. And I wanted to say I love how diverse you are in what you do. If you can just kind of talk about, and start off with, I mean, you do so many different things in the industry, and which isn't always common to have so many different genres you work in. What made you interested in just comedy in itself?
Comedy, I feel like just kind of came naturally to me, for sure. I feel like as a person of color and having to explain my origin story so many times, I got a little bit of a humor with it, a coping mechanism for sure. And so comedy definitely, I definitely think it came from that. And I think just my diverse interests came from being in the industry so long, seeing what else I can do to keep myself creative and to keep myself active and to keep myself, creating something that I can tangibly show people that I'm doing something. It's just so important in the industry. They're always like, what's your next thing? Well, you got to have stuff going on.
You are kind of in I guess, somewhat of a complex area, because not only are and because you're biracial, one, in the comedy sector, it's really basically male dominated and was male dominated. And then you come into the industry because then you have, and now we're with this whole cancel culture thing, right? And so you're kind of like having to play both ends, like when I relate to your audience, it's almost sense of like, well, because I can play both sides of the field and enjoy it, but then being a woman, am I enough black? Am I not enough black? You know what I'm saying? And being biracial myself, what can I say? How far can I go? But then again, having to babysit your audience. Do you find that to be somewhat difficult?
I mean, I talk about code switching a lot. Code switching, for those of you who don't know, is basically how we kind of communicate, especially biracial or mixed children. It's how we kind of communicate in different areas of our life, right? Just to kind of fit in. And I feel like all comedians have to code switch, right? We have to see what kind of audience we have. We have to see what kind of jokes we can tell. We've got to communicate with our audience. We've got to figure out where we can meet them. And where we can make them laugh, because not all audiences are the same. It's just the way it is. We're all coming from diverse backgrounds. We're all coming from different experiences. What I find funny and hilarious doesn't always mean it's funny and hilarious to you.
Right.
And I'm one of those weird comics that has a whole bunch of jokes available, but doesn't necessarily always do the same set. Because I look out into the audience, I feel the vibe, and I change it based on that.
Right.
And so that is how it's changed that's at least how it's changed my comedy. When I first started comedy, I had like a set plan, and no matter what the audience looked like, this is what it's gonna be, and then I realized, just like everything else, we have to adapt, and we have to change, and we have to roll with there's that great statement, right? Know your audience.
Yes.
Know your audience.
and you know what? It seems to me like you had to create your own space in the entertainment industry. And as we know, many of us who, I'm not in entertainment, but I keep up with enough people coming out, from celebrities to influencers, and when it's one of when you go for a part, and then you think, how do I fit into that part? How do I envision and create my space to be a specific character or part that's normally, there's not a lot of space for our part.
No.
It's not
no,
at all.
And it's true. It's true. I mean, when I was a kid actor, I used to put it so much on me. Like, I put it so much on me. Where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? It has to be, like, I really put a lot of pressure on me to try to fit into a box.
Right.
That, as I got older and wiser, I realized that there's so many elements in casting that is out of my control. So all I can do is be the best that I can be and hope that I fit into that role. If I don't, there's nothing much I can do, right? But what I can do is when I create my own content, when I write my own roles, I can definitely make my type shine. I can make my friends shine. I can make, all kinds of people shine that may not be typically highlighted in other, mediums. So, I mean, that's just the benefit of creating your own content. That's the benefit of being a filmmaker or a writer. If you're not seeing it, you can create it, right? There's not much you can do, when you're going into a casting room. You can just do the best you can.
Right.
And you can't really beat yourself up about what you may or may not be. I used to. It was hard. I had to get over it real fast because I was like, this is not a great feeling.
So is that where did you discover your background in writing? Was it just fine? And so was it just that your experiences and then you started writing based on that, or just creating your own space in entertainment, in Hollywood? Because I'm sure it could be very difficult in Hollywood.
I'm sorry you broke up first.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so for those, I'm going to ask that question again. So your background in writing. So when did that come into in fruition? So was it just because you were trying to find your own place and said, I have to write my own content because you're doing so much, and as well as being an advocate and for women and biracial and no one really has. And I don't want this to sound negative to anybody, but there's I've never seen anybody who has taken that forefront step and actually not separately supporting, but how we as biracial people are viewed, and an advocate for biracial and a woman who is biracial, and then of course a woman who is half black.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is. I think I came from a family that is very into like writing poetry and storytelling, and so it came natural to me. I do think that at a certain point I decided to tell my truths, my feelings, and I was scared for a long time, because I felt like as a biracial woman, I felt like when I entered a room, I was apologizing for a lot of things.
Right.
I was just coming into a room with an apology and not really being myself, and not feeling supported and just trying to please everyone.
Yeah.
And I had to start caring about my own feelings and care less about how it made other people upset.
Right.
Our existence as biracial women and biracial people in general, mixed people, it causes people's brains to just go our existence itself just it causes a lot of people some issues, and so like when you walk around with that, it can get to you. And so I realized that I wanted to share that, and I didn't want anybody else to tell me that I didn't feel this way and I didn't have a right to feel this way, right? And it was scary because I'm light skinned too, so that's a whole nother, like, colorism is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, colorism,
yeah. And so I apologized for that for many, many years of my life. And even now in my work, I cannot not mention that I'm light-skinned and the privileges and disadvantages of that.
Right.
Because there is privileges and disadvantages to in general to all of this stuff.
Correct.
Right?
There's colorism within every race, which people sometimes don't realize within every community, and that I know as far as, especially in the Asian community. And and I know you've even gotten into modeling. I love the whole thing with the curvy modeling. Let me tell you, finally, because myself and even people who just a little thicker, and because we know what the traditional models they say look like, and it is so about time that even when it comes to Victoria's Secrets and stuff, they're all saying that okay, you don't have to be a size 3 to be a model. And, the indifference of the look is what makes you so much more enticing and beautiful and glamorous. How did that come into fruition? I mean, is that something that you had always wanted to do, or was it just accident?
It was kind of accidental. I was a regular model. I was, just a normal size model, which it's not a statement I should even say, because whatever size is normal for you.
Right,
yeah. Basically, typically what they say is like a normal model, and then they say plus or curvy. And then I gained some weight. I think I gained like 15 pounds and lost a whole bunch of different different jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I had an agent tell me like lose 50 pounds or gain 50 pounds, and I was like, well, gaining 50 pounds sounds delicious right now. I just kind of did it. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like, I don't know. I think it was kind of out of spite, and I was tired of trying to fit into an ideal. I'm the curviest in my family, in my immediate family, and I've always struggled with weight. I've always been super active, super like eating healthy and stuff like that, but I'm just this curvier girl.
Yeah.
And so I had to like go, what's comfortable for me? And I think what's beautiful and what makes you like stand out, and what modeling is about, right, is like selling clothes and selling this confidence, and that should be any size.
Yeah, because you don't know who's buying it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because everyone can, like, could be the most beautiful, girls in the world that are just walking down the street just confident, and it doesn't matter the size. And men do. Like, I'm seeing some plus size, curvy guy models now, which I think is so cool.
Yeah. Even mannequins are changing in the stores and the retailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is about time. Yeah, it's about time. So I read someplace that you worked in a sex toy shop while going to the acting academy, and and I wanted to talk about that. I'm sure you saw some like weird experience that you were able to use within your whole comedic, and even when you're going to, what they call if you're going to like interview or have a casting call. I mean, what was that like?
Oh, it was an interesting thing. I mean, you learn so much about people, and I will say one of the reasons I like to have like different jobs, to read a whole bunch of different. I'm really like into different people's perspectives and knowing about people and watching people, and I guess that's why I'm an entertainer, right? But it was interesting just to hear people's needs and wants, and some of it you were like, ooh, and I really gotta stop judging, It really made me less judgmental, I will say that, because people would come up to you and ask for things, and I would be like, oh, give me a second, let me go see if it's in the back. There's nothing in the back.
Right.
And I would just go, and then I'd be like, yes, I found it for you, But it really did make me less judgmental about people's lifestyles. It made me care about people's like relationships and love and sex a lot more. Like, I mean, so many people just want love and affection, and they just want, it in a variety of ways, and it's great. You become kind of like a therapist.
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little bit,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? You know, there's a lot of couples that come in and go, I need this, I want this in my life. And, you know, or she or he is like, I don't. You know, how can we compromise? Well, how can we do this safely or
Yeah,
compromise and
yeah.
respect each other? So then you just become kind of like a therapist. You're like, okay, this is kind of like this. And this might make him feel that way, and this might make you feel this way, and then you guys will both be happy. You know?
You know, in today,
It was
right
just
now, there's so much going on in, well, like I was saying, in cancel culture and what everyone can do. And I think people become so sensitive right now with every little thing that almost everything now is racial or biased or something. It's like you're afraid to say anything or do anything
Yeah.
because you're not really sure how another person will accept it. And me, I figure someone says something, even if they said something to me, if I know that's not me, I really don't care. You know, I'm just like, I move along.
Right.
And so, my question to you is, being, on in comedy and on the comedy circuit, it must make it difficult because now, before, some of the best comics, you have to be. It's talking about other people. It's being your personal experience with other people and relationships. And if we can't talk about each other, it doesn't make it fun because it just makes you more comfortable. That's how I take it. That we can talk about one another. So do you find it now it's more difficult to get out there because you just never know what you can say that's funny to some and other people well, I took it offensively.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. It is a interesting time to do comedy. I usually talk about in my comedy about being biracial, about my family. I'm kind of in a safer area because of that. The only thing that can kind of give people things is because I'm light skinned and I've been getting that my whole life. So I'm not really, but it has really affected a lot of my friends. And, I have, we always run jokes by each other. And now a common statement is like, ooh, I don't think you can say that.
Yeah.
Ooh, people are going to be offended. And not that shouldn't be, people feeling should be considered, absolutely. But you have to be able to explore in comedy, and you have to be able to have the hard conversations. But I think if you come at comedy from an empathetic, non-attacking method, I think that's the best way to do it, right? Like,
right.
Some people come pretty harsh at certain issues, and that might be the reason why things are taken a little bit harder, I think we just, and we also have to just be like, everyone's gonna mess up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does it mean it's the end of the world? It's like, you could say something wrong. Can't we just, and maybe the biggest thing that I think that you can do when you do mess up is just say, I messed up.
Yeah.
Don't defend it, just say, I messed up.
Yeah.
I want to learn, what can I do better? Because we
I
all
agree.
step in it.
I agree.
Especially in comedy.
Yeah, I'm losing so much in
do it.
people that I followed for so many years, and it's and even though some people want to cancel them out, and even certain people on TV, and I'm just like, yeah, but I just never saw them that way. I followed them for so many years, and sometimes just that one thing, people just want to say that's it, and I'm like, well, gosh, I followed them for years, and I never saw that person that way. I just thought they were just kind of humorous. Maybe got out of line once in a while, but they were always humorous. So I do want to talk about your acting background. So I know you've done a few things. You had some connection with like the Addams Family movie and different and different types of films and genre. How did acting come about? I mean, so I want to know what happened first. Was it comedy and then said, you know what, I'm going to get into the acting realm? Because what I'm finding is that the funniest comedy shows, there usually always seem to be comedians for sitcoms. And so you do the history, it's like, I don't know if they're going to search for comedians because of they know how to relate in a different way with a live, an audience versus actors. Not to say that people that haven't spent years crafting their skill in acting, but it seems that when you look at sitcoms, it always seems to be someone who has a past originally in comedy.
I mean, hitting the comedy circuit is such good training for being up for anything. I'll just say, even my improv days, stand up, those are such amazing tools to bring to your acting. But I actually started acting and singing first. I was a kid actor. I started around like 3 years old. I think I got my first manager, and it was just because I was so like, I wouldn't stop singing and dancing everywhere. I would annoy my whole family with like just like doing anything. Like I mean, there's a recording of me at 3 singing "Nasty Boys" from Janet Jackson, like full out, just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like the fact that I knew those words. But I had older sisters. And I think it's a lot of their fault that I started acting too, as well, because they were 12 and 13 when I was born, and so I just was like their favorite toy. They would just dress me up, make me sing for them, and I never stopped. I just wanted to do it for the rest of my life,
If there was a character or a role that you would want to play, or be what, have you thought of what that would be?
Yeah, I've had this, there's this older Disney movie called Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and I've always wanted to redo it in a more, it's about a witch who finds these kids and is forced to, and they go on all these adventures, but I, being biracial and my mom being from New Orleans, would love to redo that and be the lead in that and give it a little Creole flair. That would be the dream.
Now, I know you do have, you actually do some writing for yourself, as well as you have this, you have a podcast, as well as there's some, I don't know, where you do all these sketches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So let's talk about the pod. I mean, I want to share that with people and the sketches and stuff that you're doing.
Oh yeah, so my YouTube channel is Anastation TV, and that's usually where I put up the comedy songs and sketches that I do. I'm also putting them up on Instagram because that's what we do now. We put them all on Reels. It's all the Reels now.
Yeah.
And my podcasts, I do one called Anastation TV, which has some comedic meditations. And then I do one called Serial Killers.
That one.
Yes, I do Serial Killer, which pairs breakfast cereal and true crime. And sometimes our pairings are bad, but we try to justify why we pair them together.
Because I know that on one of your comic sketches, you talk about liking true crime, right?
Yes, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I watch it nonstop. My boyfriend does not understand. He's like, why would you want to watch this? And I'm like, I love it. I don't know why. My mom and me just watch it all the time.
Do you think you can get your material even from these shows? Because let me tell you, I watch a lot of crime stuff myself. So when I was watching one of your lives about and you talked about that, and sometimes I think they're serious, obviously, but sometimes they're also funny because I listen to the narrator's voice on how monotone and serious it is, and then I never ever got where they say shot dead, and I'm like, well, I don't know if they mean when they say and was shot dead, but I like true crime myself. So when I saw that, I thought I'm sure you can get so much out of those, because I just crack up at some of them sometimes.
I do a lot of true crime, in my stand-up. I talk a lot about Carol Baskins because she is just hilarious to me. If you don't know who Carol Baskins is,
I do.
it's Tiger King. and the new season's coming out, and I just think, to me, like, I make this whole joke about how she's the white woman's O.J. Simpson, and she's just. I make so many jokes about her, and I will never stop. I will never stop.
So since I know that you've done some things in film, who is like one of the actors or actresses that you met that you would say you enjoyed the most, your experience working with them?
Raul Julia, forever. He was the best. He was the sweetest. He was the kindest. And when I was working on the first Addams Family film, I was actually in that one. The second one, it was just the soundtrack. But the first one, just the soundtrack. Don't belittle myself. What did I just
Yeah.
I gotta catch myself when I do those things. Sometimes just go, reel it back. We ain't doing that. In the first one, I was in it, and he was just so sweet. Like, I was just such like a fangirl, and he like had lunch with me, and he was just like, would listen to me sing, or like, gave me good advice. I will always treasure that.
Now, I know you mentioned singing, and I know going to your website, you actually have like different tracks on there.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And so, so sing. What's your genre? Do you want to do more commercial? Do you really want to get out in the profession? Is it what would be your number one choice in your career, or you say I just can't choose?
No, I've always wanted to do comedy songs. Like, I've always wanted to be, and it's just not very common for women to be do comedy songs. There's so many men that do musical comedy. And it has always been a goal of mine to be that. And lately, I've been running around going, I want to be the Megan Thee Stallion of comedy. And it's driving everyone crazy. And they're like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, just let me do it. I'll figure it out. So that's my goal.
So being like comedy, somewhat being your first choice, I say, if you had to. And, what would be the most, I've had one other person on here, but he wasn't necessarily a comic. He was the one doing the promoting end of it. Mm-hmm. And I had him, I think it was like a month or two ago. And so what would you find it most difficult getting out there? And because I hear these stories about being on the comic circuit, not getting paid or getting paid, not enough, not really seeing the value. What's most difficult in getting out there, and it's going to take years. It could literally take years, they say, just being out there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm 6 years into stand-up. And it's a grind. It's doing multiple shows a night. It's doing very low to no pay just to get stage time. And it's not that glamorous. But it is so I don't know. There's something about going on stage and having somebody coming up to you after and going, gosh, I'm biracial too, and I feel that such and such way. Mm-hmm. I would do a bazillion shows in, silly bars. Like, I did one in a silly bar, and there was like a Dodger game going on, and I was like, how can I compete with that? But you do it, you do what you can. It's paying your dues, and if you can get a couple people to laugh in situations like that, you're doing good, But it is hard. I'm not going to say it's an easy life, especially if you're a person of color, if you're a woman of color.
Yeah.
It is a different grind. But I think the best thing that I ever did was find people in this community that would have my back, and that's the best thing ever. Like, the fact that we can go to things together and we can support each other, build your tribe, build your community,
And I know, I'm in my 50s, so I know that when I was in my 20s, I remember always going to a different comedy place. And at the time I remember I was in California, there was so many in LA, so many, and even like New York and Chicago, so many that you kind of followed, certain comics. And so now it's kind of minimized where there's not as many, places that you can go anymore and that's promoting. And so, and because of that, it was like I asked a question about the difficulty, but too, I heard that it's also about timing. It's like because you're on stage and it's having that it's not always the joke, which of course that how funny you are matters and how you relate, but it's like timing, and it's like you're having to practice before a show, which you think is somewhat like they're just going live, and sometimes you do have to transition depending on the audience. And how difficult is that? Because I'm sure the timing is different all the time.
Oh yeah, and sometimes you mess it up. Sometimes you mess up that timing. Sometimes your timing is amazing on some joke and you're great, and then and you're like, ooh, I could have done that better. But the thing is, the more you get up on stage, the more you do it, the more comfortable you are with it, and the more you are able to adapt. I think that's the thing, like adaptability on stage is such a great skill. I am hugely a fan of being of learning how to go with the audience on that journey. To be like, my comedy is more like being your best friend, right? And so that really is like, let's go on a journey together. Let's figure this out. Like, let's talk about it, and let's have this cool conversation. Some other people's stuff might be a little different, but you got to find your speed. You got to find your tempo, and your tempo might change depending on the crowd.
So I've only seen this on TV, to where people will use their friends or family in their show, and then sometimes you're like, oh, they're like pissed, or think like, I can't believe. So I'm sure you can get, you can find things you can utilize from your closest family and friends, but then have to like, okay, how do I say this without, saying no one identifying who they are? I mean, have you ever had that experience where like, oh, this is so funny, I have to use it? Do you feel like you have to ask him, or be like, hell no, I'm not going to ask. It's funny. I'm going to share it.
I do ask. But my family is very, like, my mom comes to most of my shows. She's very supportive. And she almost becomes part of my show, because she just, like, will be like, yes, I did that. Woo! And so she's always down. My nieces and nephews are now kind of having a competition with each other, because I'll be like, oh, I'm doing a joke about you in my stand-up, it's this and this and this, and then they'll be like, why didn't it, what about me? What about the other one? Like, the other one will fight and be like, well, I'll give you something. I've got material.
Really?
Like, so funny. It's so funny. They love it. But, like, I think the thing is, like, we can think things are funny, but we don't have to be mean, right? Like, nothing's mean. It's just this silly thing that happened, the silly dynamic that we have. And we're a very loud and boisterous family with a lot going on, and so we have stories to tell.
So now I know you're also a Comic-Con panelist. Who doesn't love Comic-Con? So how did that even happen? That's pretty cool.
The funniest thing is that I started a podcast, it's probably like 12, 13 years ago. And before it was like a thing that was like super easy. Everyone did it. I was just like, how do we do this? And we were just like, I had like no clue that I couldn't do things. So I just started I was just like, oh, let me just ask people. Like, when we started, I was like, oh, let me ask this recording studio if they want to have us be a show on there. No, we have no experience. Absolutely no. We can just, and they were like, yes. And then I was like, oh, how do I get involved in comic conventions? Because we're a nerdy podcast. And so I just reached out to conventions, like huge conventions, and was like, hey, how do you get a panel?
Wow, that's great.
They were like, well, actually a forum. And I was like, cool. And then I just pitched myself and I started getting panels like right away. And it's just like, I guess being naive enough to ask.
Yeah.
You know, just being like, hey, how do you do this?
I mean, you have to start somewhere, obviously.
Right?
Otherwise, you wouldn't have
Right?
gotten to that point.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think it's brilliant that you're able to use your platform. And I know that you go over things like, you know, racism, police brutality, and stuff like that, but are able to turn it into something comical and your experience. And so I don't know if you've had a personal relationship, but how do you how does the audience take that? You know, so I mean, because you've got every mixture in that audience.
Yeah. I mean, I will say sometimes when I have a predominantly white audience, I have to be like, it's okay, I'm fine. You know, like I'm standing up here. That's what therapy is for. Like, it's fine. But I think at least most crowds of people, you know, might go ooh for a second, but then they get it. You know, I think the thing is that I give them permission to laugh. I tell them it's okay. This is okay to laugh at. You know, like I think that's a lot of what people are scared of now. It's like, can I laugh at this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I the person that can laugh at this?
And you've heard, I'm sure you've heard people say things like, you know, I'm going to go to hell, but that was funny. You know what I'm saying? Because I've done that, and I've seen some like, oh my gosh, it's like, I can't say anything, but that was really funny though.
Yeah, for sure. We've all gone like, you know, and I mean, I tell a whole joke about like how not to get my dad arrested when I used to throw tantrums as a kid. You know, like, you know, and some people are like, ooh, but it's the reality, you know, and and it's funny. Like it's either funny or it's sad, and I choose to start the conversation with comedy. I choose to talk about, have you been there? Like, you know, because I have, you know, like, and there's so many people that have been there, and like we can laugh, cry about it.
So what about writing a book?
Huh?
Writing a book.
Yes, I am. I'm working on it. That's one of my pandemic projects that I've been really been plugging away at.
And is this going to all come from everything from your personal experiences, kind of like your memoir, your biography?
No, it's actually the one I've been writing has been more about like self-help from a comedic.
Oh my gosh!
And being honest about you know, I feel like we take self-care so seriously, like we take growth and all that so seriously, and I find that intimidating. You know, like when we're trying to do all this like self-care and this like amazing like growth and stuff like that, but if you're like taking it so seriously that you can't move, you know, I had to make it easier for myself. I had to come at it with comedy, and so that's what I've been working on. I'm sure one day I'll be writing a memoir. I did my one-woman show, which is basically the first 10 years of my life, and so there's stories there for sure.
But you know, a self-help coming from someone on the comedic side, why it's so indifferent is because comedians are always supposed to be funny. And it's like, can you ever be serious? Or you think, okay, they're funny, so you think their life is just comical all the time, and that's where they're getting all their stuff, all their material. But not realizing that, you know, to stay funny, you really have to be like, how are you in the background in your personal life? Because if you're not doing well, I mean, how funny can you be? Really?
Yeah,
I would think that.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say that, you know, comedians a lot of us are always on. There's a lot going on with us.
Yeah, and then, you know, you would think that you always have to be funny. Like, do people anticipate that I'm always have to be on on stand up. I mean, I have a life outside of this. This is my this is my career, because you see a lot of people like and with the whole Dave Chappelle, and then I like Seinfeld. I like a lot of the older comedians. And of course, and there's some new great young comedians. But people sometimes I'm looking at, why are they looking at what happened in their personal life, their job as a comedian, and what they do in their personal life are like two separate things.
For sure.
Well,
absolutely, yeah.
And where they call, now you get into that kind of cancel culture thing. But I mean, I'm really excited about what you're doing, only because being biracial, I don't really get to hear a lot of people talk about, the both sides of it. And then having to, almost seem like you have to find your place. And it's like, well, if I date somebody, and I dated people of different races. I married someone of a different race other than black. And then it's like, oh, don't you, you're black? I'm like, well, yeah, I know I'm black. And then, because I'm also Filipino, and that's the Asian Pacific Islander part, then you get benefits of enjoying that culture. So that's when when they introduce me, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's about time, because I've never had someone who speaks on behalf of biracial people to understand we don't experience just one side. You're experiencing both sides, and just even within your family. So you have your family, the family dynamic, then you have outside people of like, do I have to choose a side? Am I supposed to choose a side? Can't I just love both? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I have always been a firm believer that you should love both sides. Like, I would never want to discount my mom or my dad and what they fought to be together for. Like, I would never, ever. And with dating, it's like, yeah, people can be very judgy, but like, what are you supposed to date? But I'm going to tell you, the easiest way that I can get through it is going, no matter what I do, I'm already in an interracial relationship with myself, so I can date what I want. Okay?
Right. That is so, that's so good how you said that. So actually, Jermaine has a question, and I've had Jermaine on the show, and he's actually a comedian himself. And he wants to know how long it is taking you to recover from a bomb experience, like a stage or
I mean, pretty quickly. I snap pretty quickly. I'm one of those people that's like, if I did something and it hurts me, I want to do it again, so it doesn't stick that with that memory. Does that make sense? Like, I got in a car accident and people were like, aren't you ever going to get in a car again? I was like, absolutely, I'm getting in a car as soon as I possibly can, because I don't want I don't want this to be like that memory. And I feel like it's the same thing with me. And like, if I bomb on stage, which I feel like bombing is relative, right? Like, sometimes we just have, like, really bad days or really bad locations that we can't compete with, and I think it's like, just get back up on stage as soon as possible for me. Yeah. Is what I do. As soon as I might like just walk out of the thing and walk straight into another one. If I could, like, put me up. Let me get it. Just for the sake of my sanity, so I don't get go, oh, I can't ever do this again. I'm so bad. Yeah. We get too harsh on ourselves about that. So I'm like, nah, I can't.
Do you ever watch yourself after being on stage? Like, say, okay, I've got to watch that. Like, you want someone to video you so you can go by and say, how could I, do that joke differently? How can my presentation? I mean, do you ever find yourself doing that?
Yeah, I do. I do record myself sometimes. Like the video every once in a while, just so like I can put clips up and stuff, because that's what we have to do for social media. But I do always record the audio. Like, I always have my phone in my pocket or something like that, which was really funny. I did a Halloween show and I had a onesie. And so, like, I put it in my onesie, and all through the Halloween show, you could hear that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was great. But then I usually listen to it in the car, like, the next day, just to kind of, because I feel like sometimes for me, I might not even be able to process laughs or beats or anything that worked when I'm on stage. It's a lot easier for me to hear it. Because I just think I'm just so in it. Yeah, I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, you're in the zone, and then it went by so fast. You're like, what did I say?
Yeah, what did I do? What did I say? So I'm kind of like a pretty organized person, so I even have like a log book of like, what jokes did I do, and like, what do I feel like worked with this crowd, and what was the place like, and yeah, I'm a nerd. Like, I love index cards and notebooks.
Well, it was really, really lovely having you on the show, and I'm hoping that my listeners are enjoying it just as much. And so for those of you, I see some people on the podcast. So for those of you who aren't able to watch the live stream interview that are listening on one of your very favorite podcasts, wherever it is, just make sure you go to the webpage, entrepreneurlifeshow.com. The interview is going to be there like all the time for life, and you can see where you can find Miss Anastasia, because all of her links will be there, as well as on all of our social feeds. And so I definitely, you guys should follow and watch the podcast and her skits, because I did. I think they're funny. That's why I knew some of that stuff. But I want to be the one when you have your own, one lady show stand up, and then I'm like, I'm gonna start sharing this video, this interview, and like, hey, I had her on my show. So
yes, tag me and I'll retweet it. Whatever it is.
Let me tell you.
I'll reshare it.
So it's such a joy, and of course we always want to know where for our listeners can find you, so the people who are watching will obviously be able to tell, but for those who are watching on the replay, or if you just once again talk about your YouTube, your podcast, and to make sure that they always connect with you.
Yeah, you can find me at Anastasia W on TikTok and Twitter, at Anastasia Wash on Instagram, Anastasia TV on YouTube, and my podcast is Pod Serial Killer, or Serial Killer, like the breakfast cereal, not like.
Okay, guys, so I will see everybody. It's going to close our show on our next Thursday show. Go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out the calendar of the upcoming guests, so you can be sure you're a part of the show, or you have questions, or you can connect with them. And until next time, we will see you on Thursday on the Entrepreneur Life Show. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for having me.